why productivity is so important, I'd probably hear a few different things. I'd probably hear, well, we can do more with less, which is everyone's favorite right now. I might hear, yeah, we can reach our company goals faster together when we're all productive. I might hear, well, it's going to help me have a faster career progression if I'm more productive. Or I might hear, I can have higher output. And all of these things are true. But this view of productivity is too narrow and it's too focused on outputs. We are humans, not robots. So when we think about productivity, it can't only be wrapped up in the bottom line or doing things for somebody else, output-driven things. So I would like to invite us to reframe this, because while productivity gives us all these great outputs, and the outputs are important, I also want us to think about how we get to productivity. Without you, being productive isn't even possible. So I would like us to think about productivity as a means to maintain your well-being. And that goes for you individually as well as for your team and your organization. Because when we maintain our well-being, we can avoid burnout. And we all know that burnout is not only has a huge impact on our bodies, our lives as individuals, but it's also a huge risk to organizations. The WHO estimates that $1 trillion a year is lost in productivity due to job-related stress. So people are burning out, people are getting stressed out with this view of, we got to be more productive, and it's hurting us. So instead of thinking about more when it comes to productivity, we need to think about, how can I use productivity as a way to maintain balance that then allows me to scale and reach my goals in a safe way? So when we approach productivity through this lens, it becomes a much more holistic way of thinking about it. What also then becomes important are the tools that are needed. We can't just look at those external tools. We have to look at our internal power as well. What is within us that allows us to be productive, that allows us to have this more holistic view of productivity? And so this session is going to give you some of those tools that you can use to build protocols that incorporate both external and internal elements. And this is going to result in a more holistic view of productivity that is focused on your well-being. Okay, I'm up here talking. I have not introduced myself yet, but I had to hook you in somehow. So who am I? I am Hana Jacover. I am a B2B marketing leader turned leadership and executive coach. I believe that my purpose in life is to inspire others to live authentically, and I do that through helping them reclaim time, energy, and identity. You might be wondering, well, why is this topic so important to me? And really, it's twofold. One is my own journey with burnout. When I was around 33, I discovered that I was neurodivergent. And what that means is just my brain works differently. I need different protocols that accommodate the way that my brain processes information so I don't get burnt out. I just see the world a little bit differently. And my entire career, I had been operating in this world that wasn't built for my brain. Imagine the toll that takes on you. So it really opened my eyes when I discovered, what was going on, the mental gymnastics that I was doing to try to be productive. The things that worked for other people, which seemed, almost like they were winging it half the time, never really worked for me. So I had to build my own protocols. And I started doing a lot of research around this, and I researched the neuroscience side of things. And I realized that, not only people who are neurodivergent will benefit from this information, everybody would benefit from this information. And so the other reason why I'm so invested in this is because I see it every single day. As a coach, Burnout and productivity are two things that people come to me as challenges. And one of the biggest realizations that they have is that, they wish they could find a better way to do all of these things without burning out. And I promise you it is possible. So let's dive in. Okay, I want to start by going over some of the more standard practices when it comes to productivity. So this may contain some of the things that you're already doing today or things that you've heard of that are really important. All right, so a huge part of productivity is understanding what to work on. But the problem is that most people aren't taught how to prioritize. A lot of people will use a to-do list and they will brain dump and just start, checking things off. I'm curious, how many of you even just create a to-do list and add things that you've already done just so you can check it off? Our brain loves that because we get that little hit of dopamine. But the problem is that it's not a good process. And we need an actual framework to help us measure what is actually worth our time and what can have the biggest impact. So here are two of my favorite frameworks. On the left, we have the Eisenhower matrix, where everything is weighted on urgency and importance. And then on the right, we have the action priority matrix plan, where everything is weighed based on effort and impact. So having a framework like this allows you to work on and properly plan for the most important things or the things with the biggest impact. So it's really going to help you understand what should be delegated as well. So this is important if you're a manager, or what should be removed. So understanding what to work on is going to help you prioritize those things, and we need to use a framework for that. So I spent almost my whole career on the agency side. And when you're on the agency side, it is absolutely hammered into your head that you have to be an expert at estimating projects, maximizing billable time, and using that estimated time really, really wisely. Because if you go outside of those guardrails, the business is losing money. But in a non-agency setting, what's interesting is that these things are not really taught, yet they are expected. And we know it's important because companies will lose $50,000 per employee as a result of employees not tracking time, not estimating time. So when you think about a task, a lot of people just kind of think about it and dive in, maybe make some time on their calendar for it. But this isn't really a system. This isn't a time management system that is effective. So instead, when you're thinking about that task that you need to do, before just diving in, think about how much time that task is actually going to take you. And not just the whole task itself, but break that task down, all of the steps that you need to walk through, and start building estimates around this. So you have an idea of how long that campaign strategy is going to take you, how long that monthly reporting is going to take you, how long your paid optimizations are going to take you, how long that board deck is going to take you. No more wagging it. It doesn't work. And it's not effective. One of the easiest things that you can do is start by using a physical timer. I have mine sitting right here. Using a physical timer can be so incredibly helpful if this is a new concept for you. There's a lot of different software out there that can help you track time, but honestly, the easiest thing is to just have one of those timers right on your desk. I also use this with my 5-year-old son. So, you understand how long something's going to take. You are committed to that time. You are holding yourself accountable to that time. And if you need more time, you're asking yourself, why? Where did I go wrong in terms of my estimate? So you can be better the next time. One of the reasons why this is so important, both for you as well as for your team, especially if you are a manager, is because it's going to help you with better capacity planning, and it's also going to help you with boundaries. So you're going to be able to understand what you can and can't take on, how full people's plates are, and you're going to be able to say no to things because you know how long things take. You know what's on your plate. It's easier for you to estimate as well. It's a habit that you have to build. Okay, so now I want to speak to the nerds in this room. Hopefully we've got a few nerds in this room. And I want to explore some of the lesser known tools that are so essential to this process. And I encourage you to keep an open mind with these because they're a little bit different. And there's a lot of different ways to approach these recommendations as well. So take this, information and know that you can adapt it. And we're going to be talking about harnessing our internal power for productivity. So the first thing I want you to do, and some of you might be doing it right now, is to stop multitasking. Please stop multitasking. On a coaching call the other day, I heard somebody say, "I think I'm a good multitasker." Oh, I said, no, because that is not a good thing. Stop positioning yourself in this way. Multitasking is bad for our brains. It actually results in a 40% decrease in productivity. It does the exact opposite that we think that it's doing. It also lowers your IQ. We literally get dumber when we multitask, and that's not something to be proud of either. And when you think that you're doing all these tasks, right? You think that you are doing multiple things at once, but in reality, you're switching between tasks. And when we switch between tasks like this, our brain is not happy. Our brain wants to do one thing at a time. And when we are task switching, even if it's like I'm listening here and I'm checking my email here, it takes our brains 23 minutes to refocus our attention. So again, you think that you're being productive, but in reality, you are not. And so what we really need to understand is why. Why do we multitask? And, we've got our phones. Here's mine here. We've got our email. We've got our Slack. It's just distraction central. And we want to blame all these distractions. We want to blame, well, I'm getting all these notifications. I got to check my email because there's hundreds of email. But the real problem is owning our attention. It's us. And ignoring that urge to pull away. Ask yourself, why is it that I want to pull away from this task right now? Like, what is preventing me from sitting here doing this one thing? And that's what we need to work on. And it is a muscle that we have to build, this muscle of monotasking, this muscle of doing one thing at a time and being fully present. But when we work on this muscle and take ownership over our attention, we are able to get more done. It feels counterintuitive, right? Because it feels like you're able to do less, but in reality, you are so much more productive when you're doing one thing at a time. There's a great book out there, a couple great books. One's called The 12 Monotasks by Thatcher Wine. And the other one is called The Leading Brain. That's also another fantastic one. Okay, now I want to talk about some really fun stuff. I want to talk about brain waves. And this is going to be a gross oversimplification because I am not a neuroscientist. However, this is all very real scientific information. So what are brainwaves? Brainwaves are oscillations of electrical activity happening in the brain, and they're measured by frequencies. And these oscillations are categorized into different bands, from gamma, beta, alpha, theta to delta. There's also epsilon, which is not on here. I think it's a little bit of a newer brainwave state that they discovered. And research around this is still pretty young too, so I will say that. And you might recognize delta brainwave state, for example, because that's when we go into that deep delta sleep stage. That's the one that we're the mostly familiar with. But there's all of these other brainwave states that are happening. And they're all happening at the same time, but you do have a dominant brainwave stage that is stepping forward depending on what you're doing. So what's really cool is that each of these brainwave states is associated with different mental states and different cognitive abilities. And when our brain waves slow down, we start to bridge this gap between the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious mind, which is so incredibly cool. I mean, like, think about when you're dreaming, right? Like, you are in this weird space between your conscious and your subconscious and superconscious. And you're accessing information and you are accessing cognitive abilities that you wouldn't normally use. And when I say normally, what I mean is when you are in a normal or typical waking conscious state, which we would be in beta brainwave state. So when you think about brainwaves, and you think about what I have on the screen here, I hear a lot of people that say, oh yeah, I get my best ideas in the shower, or I get my best ideas after a good workout, or maybe I get my best ideas, after a good night of sleep. I just kind of woke up and I had the answer. This is not a coincidence, you all. It's brainwaves in action, and maybe some other brain chemicals like dopamine going on too, but it's not a coincidence. There's a real scientific reason behind this, and understanding that why is going to empower you, because we can take advantage of the natural rhythm of these brainwaves, and you can tap into this, and you can train your brain to work at various brainwave states to improve things like productivity. You can also improve things like memory, decision-making, creativity, depending on what you want to accomplish. So all you need to do is probably things that you're already doing. And you really just need to start experimenting with things that shift your brainwave state so you can see what that shift feels like. And then you can be really intentional about building a toolkit that brings you into the brainwave state that is going to give you the cognitive abilities or functioning that will allow you to achieve, whatever's in front of you. So whether it's something like meditation or exercise or music, there's a lot of different things that we can do to experiment. I use an app called Brainwaves, very simple, and this app is sound-based. So it's all frequency sound-based, and they have different sounds that, again, encourage you to move in and out of dominant brainwave states. So one thing I think is really interesting too, just knowing that we kind of live in this capitalistic society, is as consumers, there are others that take advantage of this information. Thinking about the entertainment industry, for example, music, movies, all of those sounds, all of those noises, things that are happening. The advertising industry knows this. We are taken advantage of when it comes to something like this as consumers. And so this is an opportunity for you to also take that power back. This is your brain. You are in control of this, so you can use it too. And I want to give you an example of how you can use your brainwaves, let's say, going into a creative brainstorming. So here's the protocol that I would use if I wanted to get myself into a alpha dominant brainwave state that is going to be conducive for really creative brainstorming. So I'm going to take 5 minutes. I'm going to take care of all my physiological needs so I don't have to think about that. And then I'm going to shut down all my distractions so I can monotask. I'm going to take 5 minutes to set some intentions around what I'm going to be doing. And then I'm going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to listen to some alpha brainwave state inducing music. And I'm also maybe going to add some breath work into that too, to get me into that relaxed state. And then that's going to provide a really great on-ramp for a 90-minute brainstorm session. And I might have some gamma inducing music playing in the background, or some gamma frequencies playing in the background as well, that will allow me to stay in that deep focus state. And then after the 90 minutes, I'm going to take 20 minutes to get up, move around, change my environment, do some automatic tasks. And why this piece is important, you will find out in just a minute. But ultimately, we can start to leverage our brainwave states, to build protocols just like this one. And at the very least, you can just start to be aware of when you're moving in and out of these dominant brainwave states. Okay. So let's talk about ultradian rhythms, and all of this is connected. So ultradian rhythms are natural cycles in our bodies that happen multiple times a day and influence things like hunger, alertness, mood, and even the release of hormones. That includes cortisol. And because of that, our energy levels and our productivity are also influenced by these ultradian rhythms. And so when we understand these ultradian rhythms, we can optimize our productivity. So for example, looking at this chart, we only have 90 minutes of high performance before we have to go into a 20-minute cycle of rest and recovery. And on top of that, we also need some sort of arousal to get us into that peak performance state. So thinking about our last slide, right, when I was explaining that protocol, I was giving myself that on-ramp, and I also gave myself that 20-minute recovery as well. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if you don't feel like doing this, your body's gonna do this anyways. This is happening, whether you like it or not. So thinking about too, in the afternoon, when we get that afternoon slump, or the urge to get up and walk around and go do something else, that is your body telling you that you are moving into that rest and recovery stage. We are not meant to sit for 8 hours a day. We are not meant to sit and do deep work for even 3-4 hours. It's just not possible. It's counterproductive when you try to do those things. So start tracking how you are feeling energy-wise every day, and the various urges that you get throughout the day. So then you can start to work with these rhythms instead of against them. So hopefully you can see how we can begin to put all of these tools together to create protocols that allow us to access the right state of mind, the right time of day, and the right tools. And this is all in the name of your well-being and improving that productivity from that angle. So a lot of people like to think of time as this such an important resource, and it is important. However, when we look at something like energy, I like to believe that energy is far more important than time. And if we really want to go into, some other realms of discussion, time in itself is honestly just a social construct. Energy is a very, very real thing. And everything around us is energy. So our energy is so incredibly important, and we need to keep track of where our energy is going, especially at work, and what those interactions look like. Are you giving energy away and not receiving anything back? Energy vampires? So we need to look for any unequal energy exchanges. And everybody always tells you to set boundaries, right? You've got to set boundaries. You've got to set boundaries. You've got to say no to things. But here's the problem, and here's why this energy is so important. You can't set boundaries without knowing what's having a negative impact on your energy. You can't set boundaries without knowing where your energy is going. So we need to do some energy auditing and look for those unequal and equal energy exchanges. So we can start to then understand, oh, I need to create a boundary here because that's an unequal energy exchange. Or I need to create a boundary here so I can redirect my energy to this equal energy exchange. Okay, so I'm hopeful that you are going to be walking away with some interesting concepts, some actionable pieces that you can use to really think about how to improve your productivity. But more importantly, what I want you to walk away with is this idea around reframing productivity and thinking about productivity as a means for your well-being and scaling safely. So we want to take a holistic approach by leveraging external tools, which I'm sure you're already doing, but also leveraging our internal power. There's so much happening inside of our brains and our bodies that, we're not taught about. We're not taught these things, but they're so important. There's so much energy, so much electricity just waiting to be directed by you. And so when we do this work, we can build protocols that work for us. And we can also start thinking about, okay, detaching from those outcomes, right? I don't have to be in control of everything. And we also need to detach from some of these attachments that we have around productivity, right? Just because my productivity isn't focused on output right now, it might result in output later. So thinking about an example of rest as being productive. A lot of people would say rest is not productive. There's no output there. But rest is productive. Rest is productive because it allows you to harness that energy that you need to then go do that thing whenever it is, hours later, days later. And the other thing that we need to just think about is our intentions. Be intentional about tracking these things. Be intentional about your energy, your brain waves. A lot of these things are already happening. And so we need to tap in and really think about how we can be more intentional so we can take advantage of these processes, these systems within us, and pair them with these external tools and lead us to a more productive state. All right, well, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you so much to the Signals team for putting on this awesome conference. And I also want to invite you to connect. Please find me on LinkedIn. I'm always talking about all of these things on LinkedIn, and also would love to hear from you on the coaching side. I offer a one-on-one coaching consultation, and my coaching is really focused on high performers who want to have more authenticity, who want to show up in their roles the way that they want, who want to communicate more effectively at the same time, authentically, and I provide services around that. So I would love to hear from you, and this is a chance for you to schedule a consultation. And if you're not quite ready, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a podcast called The Hype Within, where I bring on tech leaders and they talk about this journey. They talk about how they have shaped themselves on their personal side and the professional side to be able to show up in a leadership role in an authentic way. Okay, well, thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear what you think about this presentation and how you're using these ideas. Bye, everyone.